Awesome. Thanks.
All right, here we go, guys. This is one of my favorites. I'm so excited. Callie Lindsey is here. She is going to be talking about health in your business, whether it be mental, physical, all of the things above. Callie is practically a Sullins. She is a Sullins. Josh and I love her so much. When she sits in our living room, we all cry together. We laugh together. I love that she loves my family. My kids literally adore her. They are obsessed with Callie, and I'm just so grateful for her friendship. It's meant more to us than anything she's ever given me for my business. The friendship as a whole means a great deal to our family. So you are in for quite the treat with Callie. You guys get a complete hour with her. We are going to stop about 10 minutes beforehand, Callie, in case people have questions. I'll just jump in and let you know when that time is. But other than that, the floor is yours, my friend.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. I recognize so many people who I've loved, and if I don't know you already, I probably already love you too, because I spent a lot of this morning Facebook stalking everyone, and I'm just so excited to be here. So I'm just going to get straight to it, share my screen. We're going to be talking about the art and science of transformation, and that sounds probably fancier than what the content's actually going to be, but my goal is just to give you hope that maybe some of the things that annoy you about yourself the most, there's actually hope for change, and they might not be the most true things about you, and out of that will flow so much transformation and fruit in your business. So this is embarrassing to say, as a millennial, I tried to practice this before, but I've never shared a screen on Zoom before, this whole pandemic. So maybe somebody send me an award or something, but I think I can do it. Stay tuned. Oh, you can choose. Cool. Let's see. Okay, perfect. So I will not be able to see you guys for the next 30 to 45 business minutes. Amy, I'll be able to hear you though, right? When you come back in?
Yes, I will. Okay. If anything happens, I'll pop in and let you know.
Okay. Also, I am currently on the corner of an Airbnb floor because the only other good light was literally sitting in the bed, and that just didn't feel professional. Like, I wanted this to be authentic, but it just didn't feel very professional. So just full disclosure. So the light might be changing on my face, just FYI. And scene. Let's go. Awesome. Okay. Hey y'all, I'm Callie, and probably a few years ago, I would not have ever attended this presentation. I would have seen something that had the word health or emotional health in it and probably rolled my eyes. I was in search of strategies that would prove immediately fruitful in my business. And to be honest, I just want to come to you with the transparency that I am kind of naturally a cynic towards presentations that have the word emotional health in them or self-care. And I, over the last few years though, have realized that self-integration, which is a term that we'll focus on a little bit later, and pursuing wholeness as a person has been the most foundational thing for actually having a fruitful, sustainable life and business. It is such a myth that you can separate who you are as a person from your brand. I tried to do it for so many years. I thought I could like present something and project something of what I wanted the world to see, what I thought would gain acceptance and money and traction on the outside without addressing like my internal world. And I just want to give you a spoiler. It never works out. Just like you can't put apples on a orange tree. I don't even know if those fruits grow from trees, but just like you can't put apples on an orange tree, someone can correct me later if I'm wrong on this. You cannot, like, you can only sustain actions out of something that's not your identity for so long. So full disclosure, you can decide whether I'm the best or worst person to teach this as somebody who has just started this journey over the last few years. I want to ask you, and I can only see a few faces right now on my screen. Let me see if I can. Okay. Have you ever said any of these things to yourself? I am so frustrated with myself. how come I can't seem to kick the bad habits that I know aren't serving me? This could look like, the diet starts on Monday and it's just going to be another thing that I've tried and it'll last for 2 weeks, but I'm going to fall off and just burn out and binge again. That's a practical example in my own life of what it used to look like. I feel like my own worst enemy sometimes. I know what to do on a head level. I have the strategies. I've been to the classes. I've read the books, but how come I can't seem to implement it in my real life? I learn a new strategy and I slay at it for a while, but it never leads to the long-term change I want. Has anybody ever felt this way? Okay, I see head nods. Good. That means we can continue with the rest of this presentation. It was going to be bad if nobody else agreed. So I just want to say, like, this is where I operated for the vast majority of my life. Like, on the external side, maybe having some appearance of success or, oops, my screen is not. So sorry. Maybe having some sort of appearance on Instagram or wherever of the image that I had crafted and went to classes and learned how to gift the people what they want. But on the inside, honestly, kind of feeling like my own worst enemy. The picture on the left here that you'll see is me about 4 years ago. It's crazy. I haven't even looked at this picture in a while. I'm looking her straight in the eyes now. So it's like, I know her and I love her and I have so much grace for that gal. She was doing the best she could with what she had. She was about 75 pounds heavier than I am now. Also, that sequin dress, I'm going to switch the after picture. I'm a little bit more casual. It took a lot to even put on a nice shirt today. So full disclosure, that's not how I usually dress, right? But I just look at that gal and she was trying the best she could, but if I don't know if anybody can relate to this, there was literally a war going on inside of me. Like, there were parts of who I was that so wanted wholeness and connection and love and success, but another part of me was fighting that. It was, and psychologists call this fragmentation. It's when out of, whether that be trauma, and side note on trauma, I used to think that was just really awful things that happened in the stories on the news that didn't apply, like, to my life. Like, who am I to say that I have trauma? I had a pretty quote unquote good life. And I can already feel maybe some of you saying that. But if you have lived in this world for longer than 20 minutes, things have come against you. Things have come against you. People didn't say things that they should have, or they didn't act ways they should have, or worse, there was great harm done to you. And so I just want to name for every single person watching this, whether you fully recognize it now or not, there have been things that have literally wounded you. And fragmentation happens when we're wounded, and it does terrible things to how we see ourselves and how we operate in the world. So 4 years ago, I was living in this place of constant frustration and shame. And the worst part about it was I had everything I thought I had wanted that would heal that would make that feel better. I had the Instagram followers, the mentions, the whatever, all the fruit that I thought would actually bring healing. It's the classic story that you hear and sometimes even roll your eyes at, like, but it was the truth. Like, I was sitting in this beautiful place I had got for myself, physical, it was at home, and just realizing this isn't it. Like, I'm drinking a bottle of wine every night. No one knows. I am hardcore in a battle with bulimia. Like, no one knows. That's where I was 4 years ago. And there was a moment of awareness that said, I need a complete commitment to honesty in my life if any lasting transformation is going to happen here. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. We can be honest without actually telling ourselves what is most true, which I don't even know if that's honesty at all. I used to think of honesty as like telling a lie or whatever, but it's a commitment to naming what is true. And so just to start out with an inspirational quote from someone way smarter than me, who I highly recommend. This is James Clear. He wrote in a book called Atomic Habits. And if you only pick up one thing from what we discussed during our time together today, I would highly recommend picking up this book. I'm going to start with kind of the premise of the book. Good habits can make rational sense, but if they conflict with your identity, you will fail to put them into action. I want to present to you, maybe for the first time, the idea of creating habits based on outcome, based on goals, versus creating habits based in your identity. One, the outcome-based habits, it almost seems easier to do because you don't have to go there. I used to hate self-reflection, looking on the inside, thinking. Thinking is for people who don't make money. Like that sounds so, but that is really what I believed. That's really what I believed. Or worse, it's just emotion for the sake of emotion. Or just going there. I like look back with heartbreak that was my view, but it was true. And so for anybody here who is also a former or recovering cynic like me, I want to encourage you that everything that we're going to talk about today is rooted in science from people way smarter than me, and it works. I'll try to cite as many the studies and sources that I quote here, but just so you know, I just don't want to give you emotion for the sake of emotion. I don't want to give you like a catchy phrase that you can add to your pile of catchy phrases on your phone. Also, these are my notes. I'm not texting. I'm fully present with you. But so I just wanted to make that disclaimer first. With outcome-based habits, the focus is on what you want to achieve. With identity-based habits, the focus is on who you wish to become. Another quote from our friend, James Clear. Guys, we are never, ever, ever going to sustain a long-term habit. And using the word habit, replace that with strategy, like business trajectory, anything, like tools, whether that be a physical tool that you have in your business or a more of like a psychological tool. You are never going to be able to sustain a long-term habit that is not first rooted in your identity. Just to kind of prove my point here, what's the first thing that happens to you when you come into the world? You're given a name. You are named. It's the one thing that everyone here has in common. What's the first thing you did when you started a business? Maybe you made a name. Maybe it took you a couple of years to legally register it with the business bureau. Not talking from personal experience. Don't worry, guys. It's fine. We're legal now. But it is so fundamental to us as humans to be named. Our brains are created to process our lives through story. And so essential to a story, like any good story we like, is the characters. And naturally, as humans, we place ourselves in the center of our story, and we're always looking to the data, to the characters around us, to the experiences that happen to us, to show us both, one, what the story's actually about, and two, who we are. I actually was looking at the definition of identity, and sameness, oneness, the state of being the same, is how Merriam-Webster describes it in one of their definitions. And kind of going back to the idea of the war against that we find ourselves in, that self-fragmentation of, we almost feel like, not the crazy movie, like people who talk in 50 different voices. I'm sure no one here has probably felt like that before, but sometimes it feels like there's at least a few different Callies going on in here. There's the Callie who wants to pursue connection with relationships in her life and sets up the video chat or the in-person coffee date. But there's the Callie who also wakes up that morning and is like, I would rather just do something for me and not go there. Like, we have to be so honest with the war that is going on within ourselves if we're going to see any transformation in our business. And just to put a practical business example on it, editing, for example. There's that part of you that like wants to get it done like the second after you get back from the wedding. But there's also the part of you that is like, if this can wait a few business days, weeks, etc. So does anybody else feel that war within themselves? Am I the only one here? Okay. And I'm sure even as you have been taking in all this amazing content over the past day from this workshop, if you're actually listening to what's going on, you probably feel some of that. Like, oh, this is such great information. I've learned so many practical things, but like there's something in me that kind of says, am I actually going to be able to do this? Like experiences of the past that showed me that I couldn't follow through, or maybe you did follow through, but it didn't work. Like you're looking to the past ways that you interpreted things to look to the future. That's how our brains are designed, which is absolutely beautiful. So in a workshop like this, I just want to encourage you that I'm feeling the exact same thing. Like, okay, here's all this new data, like, but we know enough to know that information alone does not lead to transformation in our lives at all. If that was the truth, all of us we'd be like amazing, perfect with everything we have available for us on this smartphone. Information doesn't lead to transformation, but integration does lead to transformation. And integration might be a new word for you. We're gonna break that down a little bit. So basically what we're talking about, the different parts of ourselves that are at war within ourselves. If somebody just came in on this would literally sound so crazy. There's actually a reality of a moment in your life, an experience in your life, a person in your life who named you, whether that was through an experience, spoken or unspoken, the way you just interpreted things, that told you who you were in that moment. And often moments of pain, discomfort, quote unquote trauma, if you will, they literally break off a part of our brains on the inside, even on like a microscopic cellular level. Dr. Caroline Leaf has an incredible book on brain science. It is totally escaping my mind right now, but I will post it in the group after this. She talks about the idea of literally, like, this isn't just in our heads, like airy kind of thing that isn't material. When you're thinking, your brain is literally creating matter. Like it is creating microscopic matter with every thought you have. And as you continue to think the same things, you create neural pathways, just like a path in a forest that is like slowly widened by lots of use. So all of us are made up of a bunch of paths in our mind. And the problem that happens is when often those paths that aren't interpreted correctly, they'll lead to destructive habits in our lives, destructive actions. I'm sure we could all name something that we know isn't right, but we just can't kick it. For me, it was Diet Coke for years. I have been Diet Coke sober for a while now, but I knew it wasn't good for me, but I just loved it. And it wasn't until I went back to, okay, what gave me this? Why, when I picked this up, what is the reward here? Like, how is this serving me? And I know it sounds silly to talk about, but I'm sure there's something similar in your life where it's like that one thing that you can't kick, and it's bad, and everyone knows it's bad, and your family tells you that aspartame gives you cancer. But until I actually spent probably about half a day sitting down and asking myself, okay, how is this serving me? And is this the best way to serve me? It wasn't until I could see the destruction that habit was bringing my life. I mean that in a very kind of undramatic way, but it wasn't until I saw the destruction that was bringing my life that I could actually realize, wait, it is not worth it. It is not worth it. We cannot necessarily think ourselves into change, but like when we integrate our mind, our body, our emotion into the process of making decisions and forming identity, there is great hope for change. They have to be integrated together. So the hope of neuroplasticity is that your brain can literally rewire itself. That is freaking amazing. The things that you think are the most true about you, that lead to your destruction and bad habits. I need less dramatic words than destruction. That lead to unhealthy fruit in your life. Mushy pears, mushy apples, the things that don't work out well for you, the procrastination in your business, the hard time you have with communication with clients, the procrastination is usually out of fear. It's not out of laziness. These things can change, but we have to be intentional. They're not going to just magically like get better overnight, even through a passing thought or a few minutes of conversation of, oh, I'm so annoyed about this thing with myself, with a friend. We have to be intentional. And I'm going to give you a little framework for doing that. I want to start by asking you a question and just asking for your honesty. What have you been named? And what have you been naming yourself? This might feel like a weird question, but in this, I'm not necessarily looking for like a bad answer. Some of us, I think all of us, we have good names that we've named ourselves, like hardworking, entrepreneurial, like really good at social media. Like this is never a all good or all bad thing. As work in progress human beings, we're kind of a mixed bag sometimes. But what I'm really want you to get after, and you don't have to say this out loud or over the message, but what names feel the most true but are actually leading to unhealthy fruit in your life? Look at the fruit. What has been the fruit of your personal relationships, your business? And for us who, if somebody asked me this 4 years ago, I'd be like, what the heck do you mean, Callie? For me, I think in feelings sometimes, which is weird. So I just have to like feel and try to put vocabulary. We have to almost name our feelings too. But I just encourage you to like, look at this, write down, what have you been named? What if you gave you that data? More often than not, actually always often, it's rooted in an experience. It's rooted in our childhood. Again, I love how I'm like coming at this as like the most cynical person, probably way more like mean than y'all are. But like, I was like, okay, why do I have to engage the stories of my childhood? The past is in the past. Let's just move on. It was great. There are a couple different reasons for that, but I had a big fear of blaming, and I didn't realize there is a distinct difference between naming something as true and factual and blaming a person, a loved one, for the devastation of that in an accusatory, condemning way. I had to get really honest and look back at my story and say, hey, some things weren't the way that they were supposed to be. Some ways weren't the way that they were supposed to be. And two of the biggest laws of neuroscience are, one, your brain develops the fastest it ever will develop from ages 0 to 5 in your life. Like no other time in your existence as a human being on earth are you changing more on a neural level. First rule. The second rule is nothing has more power to shape our brain and way of thinking than relationships, than connection. Not cocaine, not sex. I can't believe I just said sex on a presentation. Like not the hardest core drugs ever. I don't even know what they are. Diet Coke. Nothing has more power to change your brain than connection. And that is neuroscience, decades of neuroscience has proven that. And so I just want to encourage a sister on here. You're not immune to that. Like, I know you're amazing and special, and I love you, but like, you're not immune to the laws of neuroscience. And there is a reason for almost every way that you are. There is a reason why you act the way you do, why somebody chewing loud really annoys you, or why you're really good at being productive, or an Enneagram 3. And I can't wait to listen to the Enneagram session from yesterday, by the way. There's so much hope when we realize, wow, there are specific reasons for why I am the way I am. And it's not just, I'm sure y'all feel this sometimes, this big like overarching fog of doom. Like sometimes when I think of a bad habit in my life that I want to kick, or something that's bringing me shame, usually my first response is like, oh, it's inapproachable. Like, I don't even know what it is. Like, there's no hope even to like look here. I really default to hopelessness and resistance. I want to encourage you right here now to name the resistance that's probably going on. Like, your maybe it's not even resistance. Maybe it just kind of feels like resignation. Like, why do I need to go here now? I'm going to put this off till later. You have full permission to do that. But I just want to ask you, what might be gained by going back into your story and reinterpreting some of the things that may have felt the most true to you, but might not be the truest, which is such an important part of this process. It's really helpful to do this with somebody who can listen, which, note on that, guys, this is heartbreaking, but most of the people in our lives are not equipped to engage our stories in a way that can lead to transformation, like on a deep level. And I don't mean that as like they're bad people or bad friends or bad spouses. I highly recommend, I'm a huge like therapy component, but having someone who can, half of the work of healing is having somebody who can attune to you, who has best practices, who is like engaged with you and committed to your goodness, is so important. I am so aware that therapy is a luxury. It is expensive. But even like a good friend, a mentor at church, somebody who you can set the bounds of that conversation as, hey, like, I know you love me. Thank you for loving me. I really right now need to talk to be heard, not for a reaction, not for you to share the same story, which I know for some of you, this sounds like so self-serving and like, oh, how could I ask someone that? But there's probably more elegant ways to ask. But you have to have a space with another human being who can tell you the truth of your story that maybe you don't even know for yourself yet. And one of the things about especially traumatic experiences, harm that's done to us, whether that's even like, guys, when I'm saying trauma, I mean even like being bullied at school, the little cuts that lead up to a deep wound of rejection and abandonment, like not being listened to in your home, and you're like, this could be anything that has impacted your ability to relate is dangerous to your soul. But all that to say, goodness gracious, I totally forgot. We need people, just like connection, just like disconnected connection harms us. Just like harm relationship with people almost dehumanizes us. What heals us is often reconnection with another person who looks you in the eyes and says, I'm here, I'm staying here through your ish. I love you, and I'm against anything that harms you, and I'm for anything that's for you, but I'm going to tell you the truth, and I'm going to have you have ownership of the part that you played in this story too. And I mean this, like, if you can honestly look at all of your life and say you don't have someone like that, I would love to go on a call with you for an hour. And I'm making a big offer here, but if you can like certifiably sign on a piece of paper that like in your season of life right now, there's no one who can attune to you. This is like probably just like an internet school thing, so it's not like a fancy master's. I have a certificate in story work from a place called the Allender Center, and a class that he has that is actually very helpful and available if anyone's interested in this is called the Story Sage, and it's online. It's about $100 or so, 179, I think. By the way, those are two very different numbers for me. I'm not like 179. That's like a lot of chicken sandwiches from Chick-fil-A. But he teaches you the best practices for listening to and engaging someone's story, especially the harder parts, the more vulnerable parts of someone's story. So all that to say, please email me. If you can honestly say you feel like you don't have someone in your life right now who can attune, I would love to get on a call with you for an hour and go through that and help you re-examine some of the data. We cannot do this alone. And even the connections formed in this group could be extremely helpful. I feel some of you have been asking right now, oh, okay, like, how does this help my business? How does this help my business? And I just cannot stress, when you are committed to telling stories in yourself that aren't the most true, and our bodies literally keep the score. Also a great book. Your body, starting at, I believe, it's like 2 months in the utero, your body has both implicit memory and explicit memory. Explicit memory is the things that I could ask you a question and you could memorize, remember the result. Implicit memory is literally on a cellular level, your body has remembered everything that has ever happened to you. It is there. It's in your brain, it's in your body. And your body, the beautiful thing about the way we're designed is like our bodies can't lie. Like our bodies will tell the truth. Have you ever, like the other day, I'm driving and there's a big semi truck. The elephants of the interstate is what I call them. They are the worst, guys. They're the worst. A couple years ago, was run off the interstate by a semi truck. And up until that moment, I'd never been worried about them. I had barely even noticed them. But I'm driving, actually my boyfriend was driving, and there's a semi truck, and he's a great driver, and I trust him, but it starts coming ever so slightly. My heart starts racing. I'm like, I gasp audibly, which I can be dramatic, but it was so like not, it was so subconscious and so immediate and such a reaction. And I want you to even think about, what are the times where maybe something occurs or happens where everyone else, you're almost embarrassed to say it out loud because everyone else would be like, that's not a big deal. Like, why are you making such a big deal out of that? That's not your fault. That's your body, like, helping you, because it has interpreted that whatever situation or tone of voice, whatever has, to use a very millennial but very helpful word, triggered you, is like, that's your body's telling you the truth of something that has brought you harm, and it wants to resolve it. It is looking out for you. And there is so much hope when we can realize, okay, just because this is the data that my body is like regurgitating to me, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is the most true or most helpful way of approaching my world. We will never, ever change until we realize the things that are harmful to us and what they're giving us. We will never change until we look at them and ask, how is this actually serving me? Because make no mistake, you are getting something out of that. You're getting something out of that, whether that, for me in that moment, it's just like the relief of being able to share a reaction, annoying my boyfriend with like an audible gasp that makes him like probably get into a worse accident than the semi. We didn't get in an accident, but like how we react is often even more harmful, and just as in the long term, if we keep reacting that way, it can be just as like damaging as the initial event that occurred. Does that make sense? Okay, so a deep part of this work is re-examining your interpretation of the stories in your life. And I want to challenge you, and because here's the thing, like, I know there's so much great content. This is amazing. I love what Amy and Josh are doing here. And some of the speakers are like some of my favorite people in the whole world. But like, this could be the course that, or the class that's really tempting just to think about it and not do it. But I promise you that if you go there with a commitment to honesty, you will start experiencing freedom. It's not going to be just like planting an apple tree, which I just learned were trees. Just like planting an apple tree, it's going to take time. But let's look at the alternative. The bad things in your life that have promised goodness but haven't delivered. Do you really want to live with those still? Like, would it be worth going there and just test it out? Just let me know. I think you're going to like what you see. It's going to be worth it. And this is so cliche, but like, it is gospel truth that usually we change when the pain of staying the same, or the pain that's always been there, but that we actually are honest with ourselves and recognize as pain for the first time, outweighs the pain of change. But you can change. Like you are not hopeless here. If anything, I just want to like communicate the hope that is available to you because of the way we are designed, neuroplasticity, because we are made, literally, you cut yourself on your body, like it heals itself. We are made to renew and change, and it's there for you. I already talked about acknowledging the resistance. I was out of order. A final kind of point I want to hit on is, while identity leads to action, action can also lead to identity. They're like a beautiful cycle. If I knew how to do graphic design, I would have made them like a cool flow chart. But just like, make no mistake, you have been acting out of your identity. Like, you have been doing the things that you have been doing most sustainably, especially in your business, are the things that you believe to be the truest about yourself. Again, this is like, it sounds a little rah-rah, but it is scientifically proven, the power of belief. That is why the first thing we are taught is language. Like, our words literally have power. Have y'all seen the study about the houseplants? And if you like talk to them, they grow faster? I have no citation for that. Watch it totally be on Snopes, like boss. But I'd like to believe it's true. But even if that isn't true, look at your own life. Like, look at when you are well loved and honoring yourself, you flourish. And the word self-hatred, it might sound a little harsh, but guys, especially as women, there are ways that we are operating in self-hatred towards ourselves. And often one of the most awful things about it is that we label it as like lazy, selfish, like even the terms that we use are not gracious. You would never use that to your child, to a friend, or maybe you would, but you would regret it later. I just spilled my water bottle everywhere. It's fine. It's a rental. We got insurance. But I just want to encourage you to look at your internal world and don't let yourself, well, first notice. I want you to notice, what are you saying to yourself? Like, say it out loud. Like, try it on. Say it in front of your husband. Say it in front of your friends. And I look at the reaction to that. We are so internal, especially as business owners in this freaking pandemic. Most of us are alone for probably the majority of our time, even with families. And I know, I'm well aware that even surrounded by people in a family, there's no kind of loneliness like feeling isolated, even with people around you. But guys, we have to get out of our heads. Also, a great book by Jenny Allen, Get Out of Your Head by Jenny Allen. Highly recommend. She talks about how, like, literally our thoughts are made, our brain is made to dictate our lives. Our brains are made to rule our kingdoms. And we have to think about the way that we think. So if there's one thing that you get out of this, and I know this is the second time I said this, but if there is two things that you get out of this, I want you to just start practicing awareness. There's an exercise called The Wheel of Awareness by Dr. Dan Siegel. It's about 15 minutes, and you kind of, when you first start listening to it, I think it was originally on a tape and now they've put it online. I'll also make sure that you get this in like the resource list on the Facebook page. But the Wheel of Awareness is like basically bringing awareness to how you think. You kind of feel a little cheesy, like you're on a weird Netflix special talking about like health when you first do it. But the best thing it is, I did it probably every day for several months last year. And it just brought me to this place of realizing, oh, wow, like there are different things coming at me that aren't necessarily like the truest voice here. Again, not to sound like that weird video you watched in psychology class, but we are influenced. There are different voices. There is such a war for our attention and our belief. All you have to do is look at Facebook ads. And I don't know if y'all have seen The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Very eye-opening. There's not a lot of hope in it. At least maybe I didn't see it all the way through. There's not a lot of hope. It's just kind of like, this is the way we are. There is hope, I would like to add, but like all these CEOs are literally saying, we set this up to steal your attention. Make no mistake, like the tech giants in Silicon Valley, they're not interested in your wholeness. I'm not here to put a war on technology. I love it, but I need us to go into this world realizing like people are not looking out for your best interest. They'll look out for it if there's maybe financial gain, but the powers that be are not committed to your wholeness and your goodness, which can sound kind of hurtful, but we have to go into these apps realizing this is literally designed, and somebody may have shared this earlier, like the design of this is like a slot machine. Like there are scientists, there's like 20 people who work on just the color of like your Instagram app. 20 people who are way smarter than me, maybe not you, but me. And so this is designed for manipulation, and we have to realize like this isn't the most true thing about us. This isn't the most true thing about us. So all that to say, I'd encourage you to, on the same piece of paper where you've written what you've named yourself or been named by others, and this is just a helpful practice for, like, not just today, but I keep a journal regularly now. I never used to journal, which I hope gives you hope that if you're not this kind of person who would naturally do this, when you see the benefits, like, the truth will literally set you free. But on the same piece of paper, you write down what you've been named. Ask yourself, okay, what stories told me this? And maybe look for new interpretations there, and write down like what actually is the most true, whether that's from the help of a counselor, a friend. What name would bring the most fruit in your life? And even if it feels like impossible, even if it feels like, but this isn't who I am, this isn't how I'm acting, there is so much truth in like naming yourself something and even speaking it out loud. I used to just keep things in my head, but there is power in saying something out loud. And I want to go back to the story of when I was first starting my, I'm going to call it my health journey. That feels very trendy and on brand, but can I be honest? I wasn't after like wholeness or integration on a physical, emotional, or spiritual level even. I just wanted to lose weight. I was tired of feeling the shame of being overweight. And so you guys, you don't have to start this out with like amazing intentions. Like you don't have to have this on like the about page of your website. But I started out with, okay, I feel ashamed here, but I just don't want to be this way anymore. This isn't worth it. And as I started like making better choices, I realized, wait, these aren't sustainable. Like there's a part of me that still believes, even if I do lose X amount of pounds, I'm still fat. I'm still too big. I'm still not the size that people want. And full disclosure, and this is okay if you're not, this is why I waited to the end. Like I'm loved by Jesus. Like I love Jesus. And through the help of friends who love him too, and realizing shame never changes you. It is such a lie. Like it gives you a bite of change. It gives you the hope of a new diet or the hope of something that will finally work, but it will never, ever lead to the change you want. Because shame is rooted in self-hatred. And self-hatred is literally self-division. It's disintegration. It's fragmentation from yourself. And when you are with war within yourself, like you're going to fall. Like you cannot sustain that. And so it wasn't until I realized the truth of I have a new name. Like I do not have to be this way. Shame is not going to tell my story. Love and grace are going to tell my story here. And I renamed myself, and it felt like such a risk. And for me, it wasn't so much a goal weight, because I had tried that so many times before, and I knew just putting a number on your vision board or having something in your head, it was just like a slave master to me. And when I got closer to it, I felt good, but it was such a temporary type of goodness. But when I started naming myself beloved and loved, even to the parts of my body, and this sounds super cheesy, guys, like I started blessing out loud the parts of my body that I didn't love the most, not in an act of self-denial, but just in an act of naming something, just like you name that new baby in your life or a business that you hope will reach that name. I just started naming the parts of me that I felt were most unlovable. And like, not to be dramatic, but everything changed. It was so much slower and more painful. I had to rename myself like I had to like go back to that and declare that truth over myself several times, and with many ups and downs along the way. But I'm different now. I'm wholer. I'm a little bit wholer than I was a few years ago, or even a year ago. And I just can't recommend pursuing wholeness enough, because it leads to connection. It leads to what you want the most. And yeah, I don't know. Amy, am I
we are right at the time to start asking questions if you're good. Do you want to take your screen share off so you can go back to seeing
Yes.
Everybody? And while she's doing that, I'll just tell you, I have known Callie for the number of years now that she's been walking this journey, which has been really fun to watch her have this transformation into this. She was amazing from the very moment I met her, but watching her allow herself through God's obviously holy place that he had her, watching her move herself into this position has just been so refreshing for me. And not only that, Callie has walked a story with our family in the same kind of way. So it's been really unique watching that. So she's the real deal, y'all. Like, she's not just saying this. I've literally watched her make this transformation in her own life. So what she's saying is true. She has walked these steps to get herself into a place where she is just so healthy. She's always been beautiful, but today she's just like shining because it's just, she's whole. And that
overexposed light.
That helps too a little bit. And so with that,
can I give you a fun tip real quick for your Zoom calls? So don't judge just by the performance of my screen, but there's something called Webcam Settings Portal, and it's like a $5 to $10 app. You can download to your computer. And do you ever like go into a Zoom call and you're like, the lighting's awful here. If it were just a little bit brighter, a little bit darker, a little bit warmer. This has been my game changer for pandemic Zoom calls. It's called literally Webcam Settings Panel. Webcam Settings Panel. I'm reading it right now. And you can change the settings of your appearance to be more on brand. Here, watch. Dark and moody. Light and airy. There we go. Basically, you can edit pictures. So maybe this is the most helpful thing you got from this presentation. I'm not ashamed.
I love that so much, but I wrote it down because
game changer, especially with online meetings.
Okay, so if you want to throw questions in the box for Callie, we have about 8 minutes that we can answer. While we're waiting on those, Callie, I'll just tell you that people are cheering you on, and Katie even called you the Brene Brown TED Talk earlier. I know, what a compliment. People were thinking they totally
What story are you telling yourself? I think that's what she says all the time.
That is what she says all the time. And just cheering you on, talking about the difference in shame and guilt and how important it is to know those things. Kate even said, shame is saying I'm bad. Guilt is saying I did something bad, but I'm not bad.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's the best definition.
Yeah. So if anybody else has any questions for Callie, and definitely drop those books, Callie, for us in the group. You can do them in the chat there. The group would be great if you'll put them under the Tuesday thread, or even create your own thread just to share your books out there.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah. Morgan says, love you, Callie. I hope you haven't stayed in any more haunted hotels.
So Morgan second shot for me once, and I accidentally booked a place that we're sitting there. This is like a little sketchy, Morgan. Like, and we start Googling, if I remember correctly, and there's like, it's like haunted or something, which is fine. But so thank you for
Daddy Josh. Josh is always worried about Callie. We've even jokingly threatened to put her on our Life 360 at sometimes, because I'm like, Callie, where are you? Like, where are you right now?
I've had a lot of integration in that area of safety, if you will.
Any other questions?
Can I ask just like, how's everyone doing right now? Like, not just in reaction to me, but like how are you?
How are you? Y'all are welcome to unmute and chat with her too.
Real talk. Please talk to me.
She's like, please.
Connection.
Someone.
So I will. Hello.
Yes. Hi, Mary Beth. Oh, you were the one who wrote about the first 5 years. Okay. Hi. Is that a dachshund?
Yes, it's our little.
We'll talk later. We'll talk later about your dachshund.
Quarantine dog. So some days, because of this whole pandemic, I feel super full of energy, like ready to go take on the world. And then there's other days where it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to sleep. I want to crawl under a rock. Like I just don't want to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our kids feel the same way. Like after this Zoom thing yesterday, I was wiped out and I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly how my kids feel after their virtual day of school. I had no idea because I'd never experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is called the pandemic fatigue, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
People, I don't know if I'm the only one experiencing this, but that's just kind of where I am.
I think everybody in this group will raise their hand, honestly. It's the quarantine. Any words for that?
Yeah.
Else?
Oh, yes. Well, okay. So this almost sounds counterintuitive. And I don't know if you relate to this, Mary Beth, or anyone else does. I think one of the things that can be even more destructive than pandemic fatigue is like resisting how you feel about it and react to it. Like feeling like, oh, like I really want to lay under a rock or lay in bed and just saying, no, I can't do that. Like I have to I have to snazz up and almost this like low grade guilt for knowing that we're not supposed to operate this way ideally. And one thing that I do often is like I used to come from a very like self-deprivation type of attitude of like suck it up, like it is what it is, like you have to show up for other people. I don't know if anyone else has ever felt that way. Like it almost feels selfish to like give into that. I need 5 minutes alone, or I need to go out to Starbucks or get Instacart. I'll give you all my Instacart login if you want. Just that I can't do that. I'm sorry. That's a false promise. But I would listen to your need and listen to what your body's telling you. And for some of us, that means we actually have to start listening to our body for the first time after years of denial, years of stuffing. And that kind of sounds a little hopeless, but it's your body is so honest with you. If you're feeling tired, even with kiddos, like I can't speak to, because I do not have kiddos, but like even in that moment, if you are not able to find relief or resolution, I encourage honesty, like with the people in your life who your husband, to love you and support you. And I'm talking vaguely, not specifically just to you, Mary Beth, but be honest with the people around you about what you need, and be honest with yourself about what you need. And don't just all day. I don't know if anyone's ever had a day where like, you have to get something done. And I can tend towards the procrastination side out of fear. And so I think about what I'm supposed to do all day long, and I don't actually do it. And if I do, it's like at the end of the day and it's rushed. It's like not, or on the opposite side, sometimes I just like pound it out and don't acknowledge my needs in the process. I'm a huge fan of like naming yourself. I'm also a huge fan of naming times, like, which is calendar 101, but literally going into, okay, I'm going into this time with the intention of rest, of filling up before I pour out, of like putting nourishment in me before I work. And it's a lot more fruitful than just thinking about everything and like thinking about the fatigue and not actually meeting a need.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's a very vague answer. I'll have to look more into.
I think that was a great answer.
I think it's a new thing for all of us too.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a new that we don't know, like, but we weren't supposed to live like this. Like, right. If anything, it's we aren't supposed to live like this.
We've had a couple of comments that I just wanted to read to you. We've got 3 minutes left. Hannah said that she started therapy since she saw you last, Hannah Kittle. And I told her how proud I was of her, and I know you will be too, because that is amazing. Wendy was saying that she got coffee, and while she was getting coffee, something that had been eating away at her anxiety-wise was resolved, which made her feel so much better. So look at you, Val. You gave coffee to celebrate that. And Emily wrote that I thought this was fun. She said, random fact, the reason I know who Callie is because when I designed my first Show It website, her website was the sample for the design that I chose. Aww. And I thought her being a hedgehog mom was the coolest thing ever, which we all love those cute little edgy pictures. And then one question that you had was from Mackenzie. She said, how do you differentiate between telling your story and dealing with the trauma of your past and feeling like you're just complaining?
I love that question so freaking much. Thank you, Mackenzie, for asking that. It's all about the intention. Mm-hmm. Complaining is just saying something without the intent of resolution. It's just saying something for the sake of saying something. And dealing with the trauma is naming things honestly in a way that, guys, a lot of people who are well-intentioned and who love you and are wonderful people, like what might be you like trying to resolve trauma might sound to them like complaining. And so I can't encourage enough, be so careful with who you share the deep parts of your story to, especially the vulnerable parts. Vulnerable literally means having the ability to be wounded. And it can be just as harmful to share a story of harm with somebody and not have it met with compassion and warmth. And for a sister who, there's probably many of us who have shared something with somebody, just to have it met with, it's not a big deal. Mm-hmm. I had a friend, this is deep, but I had a friend who experienced deep sexual abuse in her life. And the reason 10 years later she had never talked to anyone was about it because the first friend she talked to in high school was like, oh, that happens to everyone. Like, we have to be so careful with how we go to. But to answer your question, Mackenzie, yes. Like, complaining is just for the sake of complaining without the desire for change. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people who complain the most, they really are looking for transformation. They really are looking for change. So if you have a friend in your life who is sharing something out of harm, out of just frustration, like, go there with them. Like, let's become the kind of gals who, in our own story, as we like deal with our own stories, we can like listen and look people in the eyes. And final thing is just like connection. Like, connection is the most precious commodity, and attention is the most precious commodity left in the 21st century. Like, the biggest gift I feel like when I'm with a friend that they can give me is like them looking me in the eye and not having their phone on them and wanting to be there. And I just encourage, like, even if it's so easy because we're all have a million things going on, like, but one of the biggest things I've kind of dedicated myself to recently is like, when I'm there, I'm going to be all there. Like, don't multitask. I know some of us are multitasking queens, like editing, Netflix, which isn't that, like, I listen to podcasts when I edit, but even that, like, I've just been so aware of how much I'm not present, even when it comes to things like TV shows, which brings up the question, like, is it actually worth being present to? Like, is this actually generating connection in my life? Mm-hmm. Not perfect at that, but it's so much more joyful to go into a conversation and connect and like experience the fullness of that and not be distracted. And if you don't want to connect with the person you're hanging out with, don't freaking hang out with them, y'all.
Good. All right, guys, it is time to end this one. I'm so sad. Callie, I love you so much. You know that.
I love Katie's Brene quote. Thank you so much.
I love that quote too.
Yeah.
I am so thankful that Callie agreed to do this. Gosh, I just love you. You know that. I'll get emotional if I talk too much more.
Aww,
she's just been so
I'm a words of affirmation person, so I will receive
my words, Callie. So here's the deal. What we're going to do is we're going to log right off. You're going to come right back. This is something you do not want to miss. Jess, my girl's coming at you with all the SEO knowledge, and you do not want to miss her. Trust me on this. So, and hopefully Morgan will make an appearance. I'm praying. I love that dog so much. So I love you, Callie. Thank you so much. Come right back, guys.